Last time, we showed you a beach that was closed and water that was killing everything in it. And a lot of you had the same reaction. You were right. Part 1 told you what was in the water. It didn't tell you why it was there, or where, or who, if anyone, is responsible. So this time, no mystery. We're going to name the place, name the cause, and answer the question that matters most. If this keeps happening, why hasn't anyone stopped it? Let's start with the specifics you asked for. The beaches in question are along the Gulf Coast of Florida. The stretch from around Tampa Bay, south through Sarasota, Fort Myers, and Naples is hit the hardest, again and again. The killer has a name, Carenia brevis. It's not a plant. It's not an animal. It's a single-celled organism called a dinoflagellate, and it lives in the Gulf of Mexico in small numbers, all the time. Here is the first thing most coverage gets wrong. Red tide is not new, and it is not purely man-made. Records of it on this coast go back centuries, long before modern farms or cities existed. The bloom usually begins offshore, tens of miles out, in water that's naturally low in nutrients. So if you came here expecting us to say humans invented red tide, we're not going to. That wouldn't be true. But that's only half the story. Because what humans do control is what happens when that bloom drifts toward the shore. Whether it fades, or whether it explodes into something that lasts for over a year. Before we go further, we owe you a correction. Some of you pointed out, correctly, that beaches don't usually stay closed for weeks straight. And that's true. There's a difference between the bloom and the closure. A red tide bloom can last a long time. The one that struck this coast starting in 2017 persisted for roughly 15 months, one of the longest on record. But an individual beach isn't shut for 15 straight months. The toxin moves with the wind and the current. One day, the water is lethal and the air burns. 2 days later, a shift in the wind and that same beach is clear. So it's not one long closure. It's dozens of short ones scattered across a bloom that refuses to leave. We should have drawn that line clearly the first time. Now you have it. The bloom is the disease. The closures are the symptoms. Flaring up, fading, and flaring up again, for as long as the bloom survives. Which brings us to the real question. What keeps it alive that long? This is the part you actually came for. Carenia brevis needs fuel to grow. That fuel is nutrients, mainly nitrogen and phosphorus. And when a bloom drifts inshore, it finds a coastline flooded with exactly that. Where does it come from? From us. Fertilizer washed off farms and lawns. Waste from cattle and agriculture. Runoff from paved cities after every rain. Leaking septic tanks. discharge from wastewater plants. All of it drains eventually into the same gulf. And there's one source that turns this from a slow problem into a disaster. Lake Okeechobee. Okeechobee is a massive, shallow lake in the center of southern Florida. For decades, fertilizer and farm runoff have poured into it, loading it with nutrients. When heavy rains fill the lake too high, engineers have to release the excess to keep the aging dike around it from failing. That water, thick with nutrients, gets sent down rivers to both coasts. Now, one honest clarification. Those lake discharges are most directly tied to a different problem. The blue-green algae, the thick guacamole-colored slime you've seen choking canals. That's freshwater cyanobacteria, not red tide. But here's how they connect. All of it, the lake water, the farm runoff, the city stormwater, delivers an enormous load of nutrients into the coastal water. And when an offshore red tide drifts into that, scientists have found it can intensify and last far longer than it would have on its own. So the bloom may start as nature, but we are the ones handing it a feast when it arrives. That's the answer. Not a single villain, not one pipe you could shut off. A whole landscape quietly draining its excess into the sea. When a fed bloom takes hold, the scale of the killing is hard to imagine. During the worst of the 2017 to 2018 bloom, Florida's Gulf Coast saw enormous die-offs. Fish by the ton, sea turtles, dolphins, manatees, even whale sharks, the largest fish in the ocean, washed ashore dead. The toxin attacks the nervous system of marine life. For animals that breathe air, like dolphins and manatees, it can be a slow, suffocating death. And it does not stay in the water. When waves break on a red tide, they fling the toxin into the sea spray. The wind carries it onto the beach and into the lungs of anyone standing there. People who never touched the water start coughing, burning eyes, tight chests. For someone with asthma, it can be dangerous. That's why the signs go up, not just to keep you out of the water, but to keep you off a beach where the air itself has turned against you. So, the question so many of you asked. This has been happening for generations. Why hasn't it been fixed? The uncomfortable answer is that it's not one problem with one solution. It's several, tangled together. First, you can't turn off the source, because there isn't one source. The nutrients come from thousands of places at once. Farms, lawns, roads, septic systems, whole cities. Scientists call this non-point pollution, and it is one of the hardest things in the world to regulate, because everyone contributes a little and no one contributes it all. Second, you can't stop the bloom itself. It begins offshore in open ocean as a natural event. There is no switch, no filter, no chemical you can safely pour into the Gulf of Mexico to kill it. without killing everything else too. Third, the fixes that would help are slow and expensive. Converting entire regions from septic tanks to sewer systems, building reservoirs and marshes to clean the water before it reaches the coast, changing how farms fertilize across millions of acres. These take decades and billions of dollars, and they run straight into powerful economic interests: agriculture, development, tourism, that don't always agree on who should pay. And to be fair, work is being done. There are restoration projects, water storage reservoirs, and nutrient reduction targets in progress. But they're fighting decades of accumulated runoff and a coastline that keeps growing. One more thing, because some of you raised it. Could a big storm just blow it away? There's a grain of truth there. A powerful storm can churn and disperse a bloom, breaking it up for a time. But hurricanes can also make it worse by flushing even more polluted runoff off the land and into the sea, feeding the next bloom. The storm is not a rescue. It just reshuffles the problem. So there's no clean ending here. No single person to blame. No switch to flip. Just a slow, shared problem that every one of us, upstream, quietly feeds. Red tide will come back to this coast. It always has. What we get to decide is how much we feed it when it arrives. Because the bloom that starts offshore as nature doesn't have to become a 15-month catastrophe. That part, the length, the intensity, the scale of the killing, is the part with our fingerprints on it. Thank you to everyone who pushed us in the comments to go deeper. You were right to. Keep doing it. If you want us to keep following stories like this, where a real event meets the science underneath it, subscribe. This is AquaWild. Keep watching.